What's up, Barnhill family, and welcome back to your home for all things combat sports.
Yo.
So UFC 292 in Boston is shaping up to be a great bantamweight card. It looks like we're going to have the addition of Chito Vera versus Triple C. You know, we didn't know if Henry was going to retire after that one comeback against Aljo, but we all said he looked pretty good, and we'd like to see him keep competing. And him versus Chito Vera is a fun fight. Stylistically, there's all sorts of things that could happen here, but I think mainly the UFC wants to make sure that there's a great bantamweight fight on the same card as Aljo versus O'Malley, just in case something falls out. And there's a lot of storylines that could play out even if the main event were to get shuffled.
Yeah, I have to agree. And I'm really looking forward to this card, especially now with the addition of this fight, because we've both been saying that the bantamweight division is looking better than it's ever looked before. And in my opinion, it's the most difficult division to compete in the entire UFC right now. And these guys being added to this is just going to showcase the highest level of MMA that I think exists on the planet right now. You know, all the guys that are fighting in this are just as good as it possibly gets. Triple C showed us that even though he took a couple of years off, he gets in there, and some people thought he did enough to get his hand raised against Aljamain Sterling. I had it as a very close fight, but it showed us that he definitely belongs in there. Chito Vera has proven time and time again that he belongs still at the very top. Now you've got Aljamain Sterling, Sugar Sean O'Malley. Quick turnaround for Aljo, really. And I think this is just going to show the people that the bantamweight division is like humming on all cylinders. And this is going to be one of those interesting matchups where if we see Cejudo get his hand raised, we're going to see him right back into another title fight, and that could line up perfectly with the beef that he's constantly having with Sugar Sean, with a rematch that he definitely deserves against Aljamain Sterling. I know Aljamain said that he was no longer going to fight in bantamweight after this fight, and I think part of that is because he's so big and probably fits better at a 145 frame, but also I think he wants to get out of the way for Merab, his best friend, his teammate, his training partner, who has been very patiently waiting at the top of the division and not even considering a title fight because his best friend and training partner has the belt at the time. I think it's a really cool move by Aljamain Sterling, but I also think that if Cejudo does something special, he might get a title shot and maybe even a rematch with Aljo.
Yeah, for sure. And there's a lot of winners as far as this fight getting announced is concerned, and the fans being the top of that list, because Chito versus Triple C is a great fight. But I think if there does have to be one loser in this situation, it is Merab Dvalishvili because of the history between Sean O'Malley and Chito Vera. You know, that's the one blemish on Sean's record that he very vehemently disputes. He likes to show us that every time his name gets announced by Bruce Buffer. So if Chito's able to pull off what I think will probably be an upset, I would think that Chito will be the underdog in this fight. If he's able to pull that off and Sean's able to get a win, he's right back in there with O'Malley for the rematch there. Triple C versus O'Malley, there's a lot of fun to be had there. There's a lot of trash talk, as you said, back and forth between the two. Aljo's going up. So I think Merab is going to have a hard time finding his place fitting into that title discussion. And I think he may have to actually do one more fight, believe it or not, as crazy as that sounds, in order to get himself into a title fight. So if there is a loser, it's definitely Merab, but us fans are getting a treat with this bantamweight showdown happening at UFC 292.
Yeah, and there's a ton of good conflicts between all of them. So any way you slice it, any way you want to present it, and any way this card shakes out, we're going to have some good storylines to go off of. We're going to have some good future fights for the bantamweights. And, you know, we've even got Corey Sandhagen and Umar Nurmagomedov about to square off. That's official now. So I think the bantamweights are literally getting more stacked than they already were. And I thought for the past couple of years they've been ahead of the pack, but it seems like they're making even more distance from the rest of the divisions in the UFC. And, you know, obviously, if you're the UFC, you've got a guy who's a superstar now in Sugar Sean. So you want to see him do well in these big moment opportunities and, you know, the title fights. But it's a very tough task when you go up against the absolute best in the world. And Aljamain Sterling has looked so good recently. He's been basically unstoppable ever since he started to make that run towards the title. And then once he got it, it was like, okay, the only person that we think could maybe contest for that is his teammate, Merab Dvalishvili, and they're not going to fight each other. So they're kind of like the two goons sitting at the top of the bantamweight division, and they've got everything on hold until they're ready to, you know, change the guards or get out of the way. But I think this fight between Chito Vera and Henry Cejudo is going to be just as high level as we saw when we saw Aljamain and Triple C in there not too long ago. Chito Vera can hit very hard, and he is very economic with his striking selection. And Henry Cejudo does a great job at taking the fight where he wants it, and he's not afraid to stand and trade with anybody. But you don't want to get cracked too many times by Chito Vera because you can wind up unconscious in that scenario. So I think Henry Cejudo needs to be smart, steal rounds, and if this is a 3-round fight, he's going to have to pull ahead fast and early, so Chito Vera has to fight from behind and try to make up for lost time.
Yeah, and I think he needs to do what Corey Sandhagen did, which is just to wear Chito down, figure out his way to get inside, because if he's at distance, he's at striking range, he's in danger against Vera, and Vera's going to be sizably taller. So I think Cejudo needs to make his way inside and take this to the ground, or at least take it up against the cage and sort of zap that energy of Marlon Vera, and I think that gives him his best shot. But either way you slice it, it's going to be a fun night. Whoever gets their hand raised is going to be talked about as fighting the winner of the main event that night. Who knows what's going to happen with Aljo? He said he's going up to 145, but I think a lot of answers at bantamweight are going to happen at UFC 292 in Boston.
Absolutely, and we're going to get a lot of great entertainment from inside the octagon with the fighting, but these guys know how to put on a show now, and Sugar Sean's really good at getting on the mic and saying things that, gets the crowd going and get these other opponents going, so I can't wait to see how this shakes out.
Me either.